Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Holyoke, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Colon. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now, you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's right. This is a very important part of the history of Holyoke.
And so today we'll be talking about the Farr Alpaca mill. So tell us about the Farr Alpaca mill number 1.
All right, they came to Holyoke in the year 1873. So in this year, 2023, it's the 150th anniversary they came to Holyoke. They were a company that was started in Ontario province of Canada, and that was by Herbert Farr. And he brought the company to Holyoke because they had a lot of power going on the canals. And he put that first mill between the first and second level canal off of Appleton Street on the southern tip of that city block. There's now a computer center basically where they were. And he built up from there greatly. Now, Farr is his name. Alpaca is what he used. Alpaca is an animal in Peru and in Ecuador, and he would buy the wool from those two countries and change the alpaca wool as a skin into coats or pants, so forth. And these were great sources of material because alpaca wool, turns out, is the only kind of wool that's 100% resistant to water. So water never gets into the material. Water is a coolant, and if it gets in there, it would cool you down, but you want to stay warm. That's why you wear wool, and alpaca wool is 100% resistant. Now, he would end up starting up a mill number 1, a mill 2, and a mill 3. There was other places with storage sites along the way. I'll talk about those and what the company was all about, what happened to them. But they were absolutely the biggest company in the history of Holyoke. They would any given week would have 3,000 employees. And that's because you have to go from raw material down to finished product. And that, for any fiber, is very tough. And they were the leader, the global leader in alpaca wool. And that's saying a lot. And this is very important because it was such a useful material during the early history of our country, because there weren't much heating beyond the fireplace you had in your house. And so you would be very cold. You couldn't drive somewhere, there's no cars, and so you'd have to be on a horse and buggy, very cold, and so you'd want to stay warm. When America went to war, they would get wool products, and alpaca wool was the best for wet, cold weather. And so the Farr Alpaca was a very, very prosperous company. It would last until 1939, and then this mill 1 would start to change hands. It was bought out by the Holyoke Water Power Company, and it would lie vacant. It had a lot of dry places on the roof or in sheds. And basically, this mill 1 was a big production mill, and there was no set level. It was all pretty low-rise buildings. But this mill 1 was finally taken down about 12 years ago, and at that point, the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computer Center was put in. And that was it.
And tell us about the Farr Alpaca mill number 2.
All right, so they ended up buying up enough property to get alpaca mill number 2 put in. And that was located on Sargent Street on the southern part between the first and the second level canal again. And that one they would keep from the 1880s, and they would produce, again, mass production of alpaca wool. And if you're going to have 3,000 employees, you better have lots of places to work. And this was also a gigantic mill. In most places, it was about 3 stories high. And again, it was taking power off of the canal, just like the number 1 was. And it was enormous. And in this building, you had many set places to do segmented kind of work. If you're doing this or that, there'll be a certain part of the building. It wasn't mass production in the sense you do this on this grand scale on this floor and bring it down to this floor. It was all compartmentalized depending upon what kind of garment they had to make on that day. Now, this mill number 2 lasted in the hands of the Farr Alpaca company from the early 1880s until about I think it was about the 1940s when General Electric finally bought them out. And General Electric would stay there in that building from their 40s into the late 60s until they moved out, and they would then leave the mill there, and it was eventually taken down. So like mill number 1, mill number 2 is in total gone.
And so quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos of the various tours and stops along them, and past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, @yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun, educational, outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, tell us about the Alpaca Mill number 3.
The Farr Alpaca mill number 3 was located on the upper part of the first level canal, above the canal, so it doesn't use the canal water. And that was unusual because the Farr Alpaca was there before there was even electricity to sell, and so they had neither canal power nor electric power, and so they were in a building that could only be used during the day, thus because they needed daylight, and they must not have been using much power, and what they in fact were mostly doing was just storage of materials, storage of the raw alpaca as it came off the trains, storage of the finished alpaca as people were ready to use it. The Farr Alpaca would have one store on High Street, so this was a storage site before and after the production processes. Now, in the 1880s, the Holyoke Water Power Company had built 2 mills that were innovation mills. One was on Cabot Street during the first and second level canal. The other one was very close by, and it was put into place between Cabot and Appleton, above the first level canal. And this was the Holyoke Water Power buildings, and it was used by the Jolly Company, for instance, by other companies, but also used by Farr Alpaca as a storage center. And they had a big storage site in their innovation mill. Now, they must have told Holyoke Water Power that we want to buy this out and own it, because what they ended up doing was Farr Alpaca Mill number 3 was built by taking down everything that was there and starting from scratch, building up a new mill. And this mill became much more than this storage. And this was because after 1895, there was electricity in Holyoke. And so they could be at this site and be much more than just storage. They could actually produce. And this mill number 3 is still there. So when people say, oh, there's apartments being built in the old Farr Alpaca, that's mill number 3. That's the least important of the 3 mills. By far, the most important was 1, then 2, then 3. And it does have some look to it that looks like it had drying on the roof, and production then came downwards. And this building, it doesn't look like the others, and so sadly you're not going to get a good look how Alpaca was taken from the raw product into the coat products. But at least one of them still exists.
And so what happened to the Farr Alpaca?
All right, they ended up being in Holyoke from 1873 to 1939. What happened at that point was they probably had too much competition with synthetic chemical products that could be made into clothes and coats, hats, so forth. That's about the time that a lot of these products started coming around, 1930s, and there's too much pressure on them. It was very expensive to make an alpaca clothing, pants, shirts, hat, coat. It's very expensive because you got to get that alpaca wool from South America here and produce it. It's very labor intensive. Whereas synthetic materials, it's not, you can make a whole batch of it, get the thread ready or materials ready, and then go from there. So it probably went out of existence because of pressure due to these new chemicals being made.
So thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And we want to thank our listeners again for tuning in. And you can tune into a large section of our other podcasts and much more at his website. And again, that is holyokecanaltour.org. And you can always email him for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to come check out his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.